What is up, everyone? So today I have the Tiberius T15 CQB edition. It has the shorter barrel, the collapsible buttstock, and as you know by now, we did the install on the BCM grip. Okay, we changed out the A2 grip. So today we're going to be installing the TSP drop down ASA. Okay, we're going to install the modern MCS, Modern Combat Sports, I think it's called, the company, their buffer tube, why I chose this, and your S3 UTG buttstock. Okay, so we're gonna go over the features, the price point, and why I chose to buy this stuff, and whether or not you should purchase it too. So let's get into this install and see what it's all about. Okay, so before we start with any of the installs, let's go over why I'm gonna replace this collapsible buttstock, okay? So the first thing is when you adjust it, you only have two adjustable positions, fully collapsed, which is here, and a fully extended, all right? Another issue is the actual buttstock itself, so the pad right here is really short, okay? So when you index it into your shoulder like so, it sits up a little higher than I like, okay? As you can see the difference in size. I don't like that. I like it to actually sit in the web, so that way, you know, it indexes nicely. Another issue with this setup is in a paintball scenario, you can run a remote line straight to it, run it to your back, and then have your tank sticking on the back of your plate carrier, what have you, in a backpack, and that's fine. You have an endless supply of air. You know, you have this large unit of air on your back. But in a home defense situation, if you decide to use this for that, you're not going to want to pop in a remote line, plug it into your tank, and then run it on your back, right? You want something that you could grab and go, all right? That's going to lead me into why I chose the ASA unit. All right, so those are things to consider. Also, this buttstock in particular has one set screw here, no set screw over here. And what that set screw does is when you collapse this in and out, it keeps this from flying off, okay? The issue with that is they over drilled this hole size, so this set screw does not lock into place. It will actually push all the way in and scratch your lower receiver if you're not paying attention. And not only that, it could fall out, okay? You could put some Loctite on there, but remember, they over drilled this unit, which is bad. One of the pros that I like about it is it does have the QD mounting points for if you have a QD sling. What I wish they did with this is allow you to get rid of all this and made it sized accordingly to put an air tank in between here or run a remote line. That would have been the ultimate design if they were to redo it. So let's get into the parts I chose and why I chose them. Okay, so for the ASA unit, I chose the TSP drop down unit. It drops down 1 inch, okay? And the reason why I wanted it to drop down is because you're gonna have a paintball mask on, so putting your helmet here is gonna lift up your head a little bit. So having that drop down unit is actually gonna be beneficial to you if you play paintball. If not, the traditional buffer style height should be okay, because you're gonna probably have a riser on your optic anyway. You have 2 quick disconnect points, all right? If you're running a quick disconnect sling setup. And then what I don't like is this area here, right? It's all machined down for no particular reason. I wish what they did was put a chamfer on it, so that way it looked more clean and finished. This radius here just, to me, doesn't look right. So that's one of the issues I have. So the buffer tube I chose to go with is MCS. And the reason why I chose this buffer tube over the other ones is on the drop down here for the quick disconnect, it's at an angle Their original version had an angle like this. This is a 45 degree 1/8 national pipe thread unit. And so it would thread all the way up in there, and then this would attach to this, okay? So what they did was they got rid of this piece and just threaded it in at an angle. This is actually a 45 degree fitting, okay? Whereas this sits at, I'd say about 30 degrees. It's not quite 45 degrees. As you could see, the difference. So as you can see, there's a significant difference in the angle. Okay, so this might even be less than 30 degrees. One of the issues I have with this setup here is the edges are not rounded off with the chamfer nicely. There's other companies that do have rounded off edges, especially this front edge. These are real sharp all the way around. They could have knocked it off with a grinder or some sandpaper just to get that hard edge off before they anodized it, but they didn't, okay? But my biggest thing was to get something at this angle, because I'm gonna install this on a remote line, which should tuck it up a little bit higher and underneath my underpit, so that way when transferring from side to side, I don't have this tube that's at this angle hanging, okay? This isn't gonna be in an upcoming video. On the back side of it, you do have this void here. So you do have a hole here, and it's a tapped hole. I don't know the thread size in particular. I don't know what it's for. It could be for other buttstock styles. Maybe other guns require that. I do recall a video of a gun actually requiring this on an ASA mount, so maybe that has something to do with that. But I did not like that piece. They could have plugged it. You won't see it in the buttstock, it's just there, and I know it's there. So that's an issue. The reason why I chose to go with this buffer tube and ASA setup is because if I ever wanted to change out from having a remote line to just an air stock and a 3D printed buttstock that's gonna go around my 15-4500 tank that I hope to get soon, I could use that, swap it out real fast, and put that tank on there and have it for home defense situations. You could also use that tank in line with this ASA and then mount your remote line directly into the tank, but you're going to want to kill slide valve in there, so that way you don't have air always in that line, because there's going to be air that's going to be coming out of that tank when that thing's initiated. So you want a way to bleed out the air in the line. So that's why I just decided to go with 2 separate options where I could thread this on and thread on the tank when I feel like it. I'm not sure if it's this thread or this thread, but when the two were combined, when I inserted them like so and threaded them together, there was an issue. So I got one thread in and then it tightened up really bad. So one of the finishes are oversized, so they either put too much coating on this, or they put too much coating in these threads. I can't tell you which one it is because I did not try a bolt to thread in there to see if that would change it, or I did not try to thread a nut onto here to see if this was the issue. But yeah, I actually had to really tighten this down and get it to work in and move it in and out like so until it fixed that and got rid of some of that material. So since this buffer tube is mil spec, what you're gonna need is a mil spec buttstock, right? You can run a commercial buttstock on a mil spec buffer tube, but it's gonna be a little bit loose because the mil spec buffer tube is slightly smaller than the mil spec or the commercial buffer tube. If you have a commercial buffer tube, you cannot run a mil spec stock on it because it will not allow it to fit over it like so, okay? Keep that in mind. This buffer tube has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 positions, okay? So if you're a smaller person, I mean, this will allow you to get that perfect adjustment. If you're a larger person, I mean, most people just go all the way out with it. Another thing with this here, having this hole and stuff, is you can machine something that inserts into there as a plug, bolt it on, and extend this buffer tube. So if you do like running it full extension, you could actually have the additional segment in this, so that way it supports it even more, okay? So that's something that you could do if you're a machinist or something. You could add something like that to plug it. You could either plug it or extend it out, right? If you're a machinist as well, I mean, you can machine this off and then allow it to slide even further back and machine some more holes into it. So it has somewhat of an advantage by having that. So for the buttstock itself, right? The one I chose to go with is the UTG S3. They have a few different designs. They have larger ones, of course. The reason why I went with this is because it was cheap. And it has the USA flag on it, okay? American. But no, that's not why I purchased it. It was cheap enough for me to purchase on a paintball marker without spending that $60 to $70 for like a mag pull or whatever. So this is a good alternative. It was 30 bucks. You have a rubber pad here. You have 2 screws there. I wish they were Allen's or at least stainless. They kind of look a little cheap, but what can you expect for the $30 price range? It's really robust as far as the way it's designed. You do have a quick disconnect sling mount here that's bolted on this side, and you have an Allen that goes through on this side. So if you did not want that, you could remove it, okay? So it's totally optional. All right, so that's some nice features that you have. So now that you understand why I chose the things I chose and what their benefits are, let's get to the install. So the first thing you're gonna need to do is remove the rear. As you can see, the screw fell out of this again, okay? And as you can see, it wiggles on down on its own. Really crappy. All right, but you need to remove this. Okay, you have this set up. Now you don't have to remove your quick disconnect, all right? You need to use your 5/32 Allen to remove this, okay? And to be honest, this is on there really tight. So you may need a heat gun to heat up this because this is on there extremely tight. Like I can't budge this. So I'm gonna get it off and then show you what it looks like. Okay, so what you need to do is remove this, and in order for me to get this thing to break loose, I had to heat this thing up really hot. And what ends up happening is, since the bolt's steel, what ends up happening is the aluminum collects a lot of the heat and then transfers to the bolt. I had this cranked down so far where this was actually bending the Allen key. So whoever at First Strike, whoever was installing this unit, they put a lot of torque on it, and that's not what you should do. It should be finger tight and then crank it over a quarter turn or so just to cinch this down, okay? I had to use a hair dryer won't work. You're gonna need a heat gun if that's the case, okay? Now you just slide this directly out, all right? This is what it looks like on the inside, okay? And then you slide this off the top. You're greeted with this unit here, which the Allen key was inserted into, so it's in that piece. This is just hand tight on there, right? Because it's just like your tank or your air through buffer tube. Okay, same concept here. Now you have your regular ASA setup, okay, for your buttstock. Okay, reassemble this stuff so you don't lose it and keep it all together. Okay, If you look here, you have an indexing pin. So if you're sliding this on, make sure it indexes correctly. It should index into that Allen key to prevent rotation. If it's not aligned and you bolt all this together, it could crush it. It could mess up that little indexing pin. So if you were gonna use this on a regular tank, you could leave it as is and put that tank right on, okay? But if not, and you're going this route, you're gonna have to remove this Allen key. It's a 5/32, I believe, 5/64. So you need to remove this with the 5/64 Allen, and it loosens up pretty easily, okay? And then this whole thing should come off, all right? So you have your plate, your indexing plate. You have this little bushing with a flare. So it has a flare on it, okay? And then there's a taper in there, which this goes into. Okay, you're gonna need this. You're gonna need this Allen, all right? Now that you have that off, okay, you need to take your 1/8 inch Allen and unscrew the two bolts that are right here. Okay, now this piece has an O-ring on it. You want to keep that intact, and then everything else looks like so. Okay, so there's an air hole to allow the air to come through right there, and then your two bolts. All right, everything looks good. Now to install the drop-down ASA. So when installing your drop-down ASA, they do provide a parts kit here, which gives you the O-ring and the bolts that you're replacing, okay? You could use the old ones or the new ones. These appear to be stainless, so I will go ahead and use these. You could use the old O-ring, or you could go ahead and use the new one. I'll be using the new one. You have your instructions. So it gives you the part number, the date at which it was born, and everything, and who signed it off and stuff. And then you got your instructions here on how to hook it up, okay? It's pretty straightforward stuff. You don't need that. One thing you're gonna wanna consider is if you're going with this ASA, whether or not you want these attachment points for your sling. If not, the original plate right here will work. All right, so you could use the original one, providing that yours came with one. For some reason, on some of the videos, I've seen them hook this directly onto here like so and leave a gap. And they leave a gap because they don't have no plate. All right, so I don't know what the deal is with that. So maybe some of the stock models do not have this plate to take up the gap. So that's something to consider, something to keep in mind, okay? You may be needing a plate like so. To lubricate your O-rings, what I'm gonna be using is the Dow Corning Molykote 33 Light, all right, to lubricate the new O-ring. You could use whatever silicone-based O-ring grease you have. Just do not use oils because with compressed air, oil can combust and ruin your day. So silicone, pure silicone stuff only. And the 33 is pretty good because it doesn't swell your O-rings and it works at a good temperature. Okay, so this screw for the drop-down ASA that it comes with is zinc plated. This one's a blackened bolt. The zinc plated one's a little bit shorter, okay, by about an 1/8 inch. Okay, if you decide to use the regular black bolt, you're gonna use your 1/8 inch Allen. But if not, and you're gonna use the zinc plated bolt, you're looking at a 3mm Allen wrench. The 1/8 inch will not fit. It's a little bit too big, just a hair too big, so it doesn't fit in there, okay? but your 3mm will actually fit on your 1/8 inch Allen, okay? Then you just install both of them on here, making sure that everything's pressed together, okay? As you insert them, you can put some a drop of Loctite on this if you choose to do so, but I mean, I like to just make sure all my stuff is easy to take off, so I probably will not be putting that Loctite on. And the reason for that is you got to lubricate that O-ring inside every now and again. So if you have that with Loctite, it's going to gall up the threads, gum it up, and you're going to have to clean that out every time just to apply more Loctite. But if you're a person that, you know, this is what you do professionally, you may be a paintballer, you probably would not have this gun. You'll probably have a traditional paintball gun. But if you so do have this, then you might want to Loctite those in, because, you know, you don't want things coming apart on you on the field. Okay, so time out. Before you install this drop down here with the bolts, do not use the bolts that they gave you. I tried to install them as you saw, but I replaced them with the original ones, and that's why. As you can see, they stripped really easily. I hand tightened it like so, and then I came over and then just barely started to apply a little bit of torque to it, and it lifted and spun out. So it actually twisted my Allen key inside, and I was lucky enough to apply downward pressure and loosen it up to get my fingers to unscrew it. That's very dangerous. If you use that, you're gonna have to drill it out if it does strip. And you're gonna have to remove this often to lubricate that O-ring inside, okay? Keep that in mind. Okay, so what I recommend you doing, if you're like me, I like everything to be really reliable. I'll be replacing these screws with stainless ones. And the reason for that is because I'm gonna be taking this on and off often to keep that O-ring lubricated. Because if that thing leaks or lets go, you're gonna have an air leak, okay? This is what it looks like installed. As you can see, this looks like crap. So if I was to design it, I would definitely put a chamfer on there. Okay, so there could be a design reason why they left this gap. One of them being they wanted the 2 bolts here to be able to cinch down on that O-ring really tight. And so they accommodated for it by having that gap in there. Or they could have just kept the tight tolerances and included a base plate. So that way everything is more flush. This thing to me could have potential of rocking a little bit, because to me that gap's kind of crappy. So me being the perfectionist that I am, I will be removing this back plate, 3D printing one to fill up that entire section perfectly, okay? I just don't like the gap because dirt and debris could get in there. I believe they should have engineered this a little bit better, machined that face off maybe about 30 thousandths, and then gave a tighter tolerance on their part, okay? So that's just personal preference, okay? Now we're gonna install the buffer tube. Make sure you lubricate the O-ring, of course. Okay, put a little lube on this O-ring. You could put a lot because there's no moving components. If there was, then you're gonna wanna put minimal, okay? Because if not, it's gonna just fly everywhere, okay? So I just lubricated the inside of this like so. Lubricated the O-ring on there. And then now I'm gonna insert it. So you wanna tighten it till it stops, which is slightly canted over. If they would have threaded this a little bit in another direction when they started, it would have been perfect. But I mean, things have their tolerances. So now you're gonna have to back it out like so. Align this perfectly straight. Tighten this collar up like so, and then put an Allen key in there. You could even drill and tap this ring to put a set screw if you so desire, or you could put it in there like that and use the Allen key to crank it over. So something like this, and then tighten it to cinch it. I'll 3D print a spacer for this, so that way it fills in this gap. I mean, I have access to the 3D printer, so I'll be doing that. Okay, so now that you got that cinched down, you want to apply your buttstock, and as you can see, it does not go on. And the reason for that is you got to pull down on this like so, and then slide it on. So pull this out, this cams out, and then it slides. Okay, once it's on, now you could actuate these positions without having it fly off. All right, as you can see, it touches the ASA and does not well, it doesn't touch the ASA, but it doesn't allow it to click in that first notch. So one out starts to click, and that's because the end of this buttstock hits before it allows it to get into that next level. So what I'm gonna do is I'll probably grind off the back a little bit so this can collapse at its number one position, okay? And that might be because this isn't technically mil spec as far as length is concerned, all right? But that's what it looks like for the lower. Now you can see all that gap that I have, all right? So a lot better. There is a little bit wiggle, okay? So as you can see, there's a little bit of play side to side, and that might be because the buffer tube is not really mil spec, okay? It could be the stock, but I think it's probably your buffer tube. So that's going to complete today's video on the drop down ASA and the buttstock buffer tube setup for the inline air. Like I said, the reason for this is so I could change this out with the tank and run it for home defense, or if I'm running a paintball game, I could run the airline directly through it, okay? Stay tuned, because I'm gonna actually take this, and for the airline, the remote airline, I'm gonna add a 45, so that way it's more of a 90 with this angle. So it's gonna 90 out and hopefully land somewhere in here. So when you play a scenario game, you could tuck the tube up under here instead of having it drop down right here where your forearm is, okay? So hopefully it tucks back up under here, so that way it's not in the way, all right? So stay tuned for that video. That's gonna complete today's video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. It's greatly appreciated. If you wanna see more content like this and other content I'll be posting in the near future, consider subscribing. Until next time, I'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks for watching.